Hi, I'm Alan Steinheimer. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Gaffer. Today we're down in San Mateo. We're at a stage called Meets the Eye. The other side is a large green screen. I think we've actually done some shows there. This side, smaller stage that now has a large curved screen. We had a shoot here, no scout, given basic information, and this is not the background that we actually used here, which is a proprietary thing. But it's similar to it, fairly dark. We've got house lights on right now so we can sort of see the set. Eventually we're going to turn those off so you can see what it sort of lighting actually looks like. So the very first thought as I talked to the DP prior to starting the whole project was fairly wide shot. So everything really needs to be in a grid. Second thing was dark screen. We don't want reflections on the screen, so basically all light really needs to be controlled. And you know, when you're doing filmmaking, a lot of times you'll walk in with an idea, and here's one of my failed ideas. Basically, I had thought at one point for the single person that we'd have a soft, it's a Nanlux 650 with a diffusion snap bag, 4x4 diffusion in front of that. And I thought I could probably put siders on it and control it enough that we could actually use it for the key light. We had that light up and burning, and the DP Eli Adler, it was just like there's too much spill on the back wall. And that's filmmaking. You try things, sometimes it's a failure. I would have taken this down probably yesterday. I left it up as a sign of failure here for the video today, so we can know we don't always get it right. So then what ended up happening was that was no longer the key for the single. So, and this had been put up, Light Mat 4, as a fill light for the two-shot, and when they added in sort of this stand-up, standalone, it ended up being a top center key. So it sort of had two different purposes on the two different shooting, the two-shot versus the single. You're looking at the two chairs for the two-shot right now. And then what I did also on the other, so for the two-shot, we also have the equivalent of Light Mat 4s. They're actually the Kino Air Maxes. I like them a little better. Then I have all my ballasts basically similar. It just works out better. I don't know. Their color as well. The Light Mat's only bicolor. So we use control grids on them. I have 50-degree control grids. I never like the 40s. They're a little narrow. Sometimes that's fine. When they're working as a key light, I like it a little wider. It makes it for a little bit softer. Here's another little mistake up here, which is that basically I went to pick up an extra third snap grid for this light, and it turned out I picked up the wrong one. Apparently I'm still learning to read and write, so we put it on the bottom, and we figured that this topper was going to take care of the top of the light. We do this a lot when we're trying to keep light off the background. So here's the other, the Kino Air Maxes. We ended up putting a little bit of black wrap in the bottom just to keep the spill off of here. They do the snap grids do a pretty good job of controlling the light. And I like the 50-degree again because it's just a little bit softer. I feel like the 40-degree snap grids turn the light into a pretty hard source. For the backlights, I ended up using the Kino Freestyle 31. We had a 21 for the single. That's right here. It's off currently. I love the honeycombs because they offer so much control. These lights are only basically 150 watts, so you can't be in an environment where you need a lot of foot candles. But they're perfect for this. We knew that we didn't need that many foot candles or relatively fast ISO on the camera. And I don't use them with the housings. It makes them a lot lighter where there's no housing. And I love the fact that all the snap grids on all these lights, the Kino Air Max, the Light Mat, the Freestyles, are all the same backing plates. One thing that just bedevils us as gaffers is when we have all this incompatible equipment, especially like head cables nowadays are all different. So it's awesome that I have the same backing plate. I don't usually screw up that part of the order when they're interchangeable. we did to build the grid, and we'll have the Key Grip here comment on it. The first problem was, normally, it's not that difficult to build a speed rail grid, but we happen to have an LED screen overhead that basically blocks complete access to the grid. So that was a problem. I discussed it with Brooke, the Key Grip. I kept trying to put my 2 cents in. He came up with a better idea, which is basically to just hang two 12-foot pieces of pipe, span it down the middle with a 20, and then we had a span that went from sort of edge of screen to edge of screen. That ended up being about 30 feet. I've done it in the past sometimes with ladder truss. I've come to the conclusion that anything over 24 feet with ladder truss is generally not a good idea. It's just weak, and so you really want some support in the middle. And so you can see the ropes that he ran up right here up to the grid that we could get around the screen, and that's supporting that and holding up that middle pipe. And then just to steady the whole rig, because stuff was basically hanging from ropes, we used some drop downs from the grid and attached it here. It steadied it enough that didn't have to worry about too much movement. All right, we'll take a look at it with the lights off, the house lights. And I'll sit in on one of the spots right here. We also had, the shot was so wide that we added this fill card near the end. I feel like it just sort of rounds out the image. We get a little bit of light under the chin, a little bit into the eyes. Sometimes when you have all this grid lighting, you just have basically all the lights up so high that there's no fill that's coming in low. One other thought, so this was a 3-camera shoot, 1 wide, 2 tights on the cross. And I often will try and put the key as more of a far side key, where it's a little further back towards the screen. But in this case, the issue was that the host in the position that I'm in right now was going to turn and address camera 2, the center camera, and then turn back this way to talk to the other person. So I basically picked a sort of compromise spot, which ends up being almost a top center key, and then they're a little bit more side lit when they're looking towards camera 2. All we needed was a dado for the fill card. I love those lights. They've just got so much flood and spot control. Everyone complains that they're expensive, and they are, but I use them on almost every shoot, so you figure you amortize that over time, and it's a great light to have. So we have the DP Eli Adler and the Key Grip Brook Johnson. Brooke was going to throw a couple comments in on the grid building. Fortunately, he didn't take my bad ideas and improved upon pretty much everything.
Hello. So we're in a studio with a grid, but the challenge was this LED ceiling. So we couldn't just hang our lights on stirrups like we normally would. So instead we hung some pipe outside the LED wall, or ceiling rather, and hung them on ropes, and it worked out fine. Pretty simple, but there are a couple tricks to speed things up. I've had this situation before, usually not in a studio, but in a warehouse or some building where there's nothing to hang directly from. So we build either a grid or a bunch of pipes, figure out where our lights are going to go, hang all the lines off whatever there is, I-beams or whatever, drop them down. We'll often use a high roller as a story stick, roll it around so they're all the same plane. A story stick would be just a pole to find the height. So it can be anything, a piece of speed rail or 1x4 or whatever, mark the height you want, have somebody move it around, and adjust your lines. It's just a quick way to keep all the pipes on the same plane. And then lock them together with at least one pipe going perpendicular and that's it. Make sure you know your knots and you know the rating of whatever you're hanging from, roughly.
And the fact that we're using smaller lights, lighter lights, weight-wise, does that play into what you're
Yes,
thinking?
that makes it much easier and safer. So I've had situations where we're hanging heavier things, and you really have to put a lot more thought into exactly what you're hanging from. Not so much these days, but it's definitely been an issue in the past, yeah. Basic knots, so a clove hitch to the pipe, up and over the truss, back down to the pipe, and then a trucker's hitch, which you can adjust.
The other thing that's really nice about building a lower grid that in this case is above an upper grid is that basically as we go to make adjustments, I'm just using a 6-step ladder. So when in a multi-day shoot like this where we're going to have more than one scenario, it's useful to basically build a lower grid so that you have fast access. You can add nets or flags or diffusion or that kind of thing. I was going to ask Eli to talk a little bit about the general sort of design thoughts. In the sense it was a much lower key set than we often do.
I was tasked with shooting the 3-camera shoot of a virtual event, and the background given to me was very dark. It was black with animation of colored streaks, but it was a very difficult thing to reproduce in a typical studio. So I looked at various studios. We looked at getting video of the animation, projecting it onto a white wall, but the blacks never got black enough. So we came upon this LED wall, and we were able to get the blacks as black as we wanted. It was perfect. The client's very happy with the look, but shooting in an LED wall presents its own challenges with reflections on the actual LED surfaces. So we had to do a lot of teasing and skirting, and we're actually in this really nice XR studio, which has a lot of capabilities. We're using it, in a very dumbed down version. We're just using this as, instead of green screen, we could easily have done this in green screen, although the editorial timeline doesn't give us enough time to do the compositing we wanted to. So this brilliant XR studio is only being used very simply as a background for us live composite, essentially. We have fireside chat, 2 people talking, 1 wide shot, and then cross-shooting close-ups. The actual animation didn't cover the entirety of the screen, or at least it didn't look good on the reverse angles. So we used 3 different elements of the animation for each background, which worked out pretty seamlessly. The angle of the animation matched between all the cameras. So we see what we're looking at. We didn't have to composite, which could have taken a lot of time if we shot this in a green screen studio. There's a trade-off. Shooting in an XR studio is very expensive. It's probably about 4 times the cost of shooting in a standard studio. But when you can factor in the editorial time that we're saving by not having to composite everything, it's about a wash, a good trade-off, I think.
In many ways, this shoot is just about controlling the light. And a lot of times there's a balance of, the bigger and softer the light is, of course, the more attractive it is on people, the harder it is to control. At some point, that sort of light mat for Kino Air Max is a very practical size in terms of this kind of shoot. And they're super light to rig.
Another benefit of shooting against this wall is we have pretty much infinite brightness control over the background. So I wanted to shoot at an f2 or a 2.8, tops. So we had to knock down the brightness of the background. And by knocking down the brightness of the background, we didn't need big lights to match the level of the background. So this worked out, on many levels. I was able to get the depth of field that we needed so we didn't see the pixels of the LED wall or the seams of the LED walls. And, we were also able to use less bright lights, lighter weight lights.
And here we're running blackout to control the set. Really useful in a situation with multicam where you want to have remote control over all the lights. I can quickly go to a look that I want to be at, the live summary thing where I can just get rid of channels that aren't working, condenses the whole thing down. I usually color up things so I can just try and find them quickly. And we can go back to fixture control here. And do something like that, and I control color and tint and intensity. Yeah, pretty much my favorite software at the moment. And we have an AKS that's doing the actual transmitting from the iPad.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.